All right. Well, welcome. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Reminder, this meeting is going to be recorded. There's also going to be a link that can be provided upon request to view the recording. You'll see the QR code on the flyer on your screen that you can scan for attendance. I also put in a link in your chat pod that you can click as well if you would like your attendance to be marked for this workshop. So this is the Employability Skills Series. This is where we just explore the top skills employers are looking for in candidates. And each week we will cover a different topic with thoughts and insights from professionals in a variety of industries. I am your host, Watson-Morrow, Associate Director of Career Services, Business Careers. And today I have Dr. Erin Miskowski, Executive Director of Career Services with me as my guest. And we're going to discuss verbal and written communication as well as emailing. So Erin Miskowski joined Florida Southern College as the Executive Director of Career Services, 6 months ago, but we should probably update that. That was from your first call. So it's been a little bit. She's been with us. She started in March of 2023. In her role here, Erin oversees the vision and direction of the Career Services Office with the primary goal of helping our Florida Southern students get into graduate school and into good jobs upon their graduation. Prior to Florida Southern College, Erin was the director of the Pre-Health and the Pre-Law Advising Office at the University of Central Florida for 9 years. She's also held a variety of other roles in career services and advising within higher education, including the Career Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Outside of her role at Florida Southern College, some other roles she holds in the higher education community include being the immediate past president of the Southeastern Association of Advisors and the health professions and the secretary on the executive committee and national board of directors of the National Association of Advisors for the health professions. Whew, so that's a lot. Thank you for being here today with us, Erin.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I know this is one of your favorite topics. So not much introduction I think we need to do on this. This is a really important piece of professional communication and professional development, is to be able to talk. And I know that you've got some personal feelings towards this as well. So I'm going to kind of just turn this over. I do want to apologize in advance. I did have some knee surgery last week, and so I'm kind of adjusting. So you see me moving around quite a bit. It's just trying to get a little comfortable in my seat. All right, Erin, so tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of your career path, and tell us why this is such an important piece of professional development.
Absolutely. If you are okay, I'm gonna work through a short presentation that I put together, a short PowerPoint, because I'm always a fan of verbal, but also being able to see something as I talk through the topics. So
I need to make you a co-share. So I think I need to stop sharing and then I go to share, right?
Yeah. If you make me a co-host, that could do it, or you can also get on a screen share and
there we go.
Multiple people. Okay, we're on it. Perfect. All right, can you see it?
I can see it.
We're up and running. Great. Well, I know we've got a pretty small group with us today, so I am gonna try to not waste time and move us through quickly. But like I said, I've got the presentation with some visuals that I hope will help bring attention to some of the points I want to try to make today. So, verbal and written communication and emailing. And on the surface, this topic sounds kind of boring, doesn't it? Yeah. But it's actually extremely important. So I'm going to approach this topic kind of two lenses. One, career services, we want to teach you how to do this. But on the other side, I've worked in higher education a long time. And I've been director of an office for a very long time. And I've hired a lot of people. Okay. So I want to also approach this from a lens of someone who is an employer that you all as college students would be communicating with in either a job search process or a graduate or professional school application process, okay? So I'm gonna put that lens on it is, how do you appropriately communicate with someone that you might work for at some point? And really, I have the agenda here on the first slide to really show the kind of the process upon which an employer will get these communications from you. So oftentimes written communication starts it, you submit a resume or an application. Then, at least on how I usually do, is I would email candidates I'm interested in, and we would have an email back and forth, such as setting up an interview time. And then at the end, obviously, the verbal communication of an interview. So I'm gonna kind of go through that and show examples of some good and some maybe not so good of each to help bring attention to some of these. So let's start with the written communication. Now, as you've probably heard, especially if you're in Professor Morrow's class, your resume is a first impression. Or if you're applying to a graduate school or professional school, it is a first impression. So you really want to put time into it and make sure it is the best that you can absolutely make it. I am always a fan of multiple sets of eyes on important things like this. So please use us in career services before you put your resume out there in the world to any employer or your application. So this is an example of what I like to call an okay resume. A lot of these examples I'm going to show are for a position that I hired for last spring. And most of these are from, well, some of them are from very recent college grads. So with this resume, again, it's okay. You can kind of see the headings, professional experience, and you go down a little further, you can see education and then skills, but there's not a lot of meat there. They did use some nice action words here, right by the bullet points. The dates are above the title and the place, like it's a little off, it's a little light. Okay, so that was a resume that I got. Obviously, I de-identified it for a position that I held. Now I'm going to show you a resume on the next slide, which is for the exact same position. Okay, and you're going to see the difference. All right, so this is an example of a really good resume, again, from a brand new college grad. Page 1, page 2, page 3. All right, now put yourself in the shoes of me as the employer. Without even reading the content, which one are you going to be more impressed by? Which one are you going to have better expectations of? Okay, so she has multiple sections with a lot of content, but again, she's a recent college grad, so this isn't someone who's been out in the field a long time. Her education section, work experience, her volunteerism, internships and professional programs, awards, and professional memberships. There's a lot there. Again, same position as the other one. So that resume is really important. You want to make it as robust as you can. You want to make it as organized as you can. And you want to make it really nice and consistent for the reader of it. Now, obviously, this one is much better than the first one. Okay, so now we're at the phase. I've received resumes and I'm going to email candidates to set up a time for interview. As I do this, even the emails that I received back saying, yes, I want to do the interview, are telling me a great deal about each person. And I'm going to give you examples. Now, again, I like to call this a not so good email reply, a better, and a best. All right. And again, all for the same position. So we're going to start with the not so good. So here's my email saying you've applied for this position, da 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 da. We're going to do a virtual interview. Is that something you want to do? Here's the email reply. Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, now gives me the information I need, but it's almost like they just texted it back.
Yeah.
Right? There's no Dear Aaron or even Dr. Miskowski if you want to be fancy, which I don't need. I'm not someone that needs that. There's no thanks so much for reaching out or I'm really interested in, like there's nothing. There's not even their name in the signature block. So I get this back. And again, I'm offering this person an interview, but the impression is made. Okay. So I'm always well, maybe they were just in a spot, like maybe they were driving, which you should text and drive. But let's see. So follow-up communication. So this is the same person. Okay, great. Here are the times. Which time would work best for you? Yes, Friday, April 8th, 4 to 5 works for me. Again, almost like a text reply. So it's almost reiterating what I thought the first time. Again, giving me the information I need, but not already making an impression. So let's look at a little bit of a better email reply. Again, same job as before, offering them an interview. Their email reply. Hello, Aaron. All right, we've got a greeting on the front. I'm like, oh, this is good. Thank you for your email and invitation to interview. I'm very much still interested in the position with the university and have availability for a virtual interview. Please let me know if you can provide additional information. Sincerely, and then she put her name and her phone number. So again, you're looking at the two. I haven't even met these people yet, but I am much more encouraged by this than the other one, okay? So now let's crank it up a notch again. Let's look at the best type of communication. So again, emailing, offering a virtual interview. I was a little more detailed with this one. I don't remember why. Probably because I had already set up some time, so I had to narrow in. I offered a variety of times, okay? Now this is how you should reply to someone that offers you an interview. Good afternoon, Dr. Miskowski. So she paid attention to my title there. Thank you so much for the interview invitation. I am elated to have been selected. So she's making me feel good, right? She's elated. Below, I have listed my preference for interview dates and times. And I mean, that 6 preferences, that's kind of overkill. She didn't have to do that. But again, attention to detail. And at the end, she has her signature block best. She provides her names and then has her full signature block there as well. Again, this is a recent college graduate. So just to kind of summarize, that's my gold star. So again, before I'm interviewing, I already have impressions of these people just from their email replies to the interview offer. So the summary, the not so good is the texty type reply. The better has the greeting at the top, the sincerely with their name at the bottom. And then the best is the one that, really has it flushed out. So, when you think about this, you might be like, well, people don't pay attention to this. The people that are going to be hiring you or admitting you into graduate professional school are like around my age. We're a little bit old, right? This is important, especially to people of our generation. So when you are emailing, and I would say not just with potential future employers or graduate professional schools, but even with your professors, really make sure the email is solidly written because it does make an impression on who you are as a person. Okay.
I think that's a really important piece to say, Erin, like, especially in that initial communication, but would you agree? And maybe not, but just from a different take. I know that when I'm conversing with students, it's usually, good afternoon, Professor Morrow, then whatever, then as the communication goes back and forth, it can get a little less formal, would you agree with that? It can be like, yeah, that's great, Erin, thanks. Or, without it having to be like, good afternoon, Erin, and then thank you with my full signature. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I love that. I think sometimes I'll really pay attention to is how in the response I get from someone I email when I have to do that. If I refer them as Dr. So-and-so, but then when they reply, they just put, best regards, Christian. Like that kind of opens it up to me a little bit that I can refer to them by their first name, but I always start with the formal greeting. And you kind of take the cues from the person you're emailing back and forth with, especially if it is that professor or employer or graduate school, to get a sense of the formality as the conversation continues. Great point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel too. And I also think it's important too, when I'm looking at your not so good, better, best, to acknowledge what the email is about. Like with your not so good, it's just, yes, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah, it's a reply to your email, but there's no identifying information about what this email is in regards to. So the other two, when they say, thank you for reaching out about this position, the interview, you know, at least they're acknowledging that piece. And I think that's important too, because sometimes I'll get emails where I'm like, what is the context? I have no clue what you're even asking me because I have no clue what the context is.
Mhm. I will not put anyone on the spot in here, but if you want to take a guess at which one we ultimately hired, it is the one with the gold star. Again, making that impression right from the beginning. This was someone that I was looking for. I needed that attention to detail and formality for the position that I was hiring.
Perfect.
So the last part, verbal communication, and I'm gonna hit this one pretty lightly because I feel like you all are gonna hear about this in a wide variety of settings. But verbal communication is really verbal and nonverbal communication, and sometimes forget about that nonverbal piece. But in particular, when you're interviewing, a few of the things I like to highlight, you know, arrive early. I've done hundreds of mock interviews with college students over the years who are interviewing for employers or graduate schools or professional schools. And once in a while, you know, a student has something happen where they arrive to the mock interview late. How easy is it nowadays to call the office or send an email or, you know, just something quick to say, hey, I'm running a few minutes late. I've had some where they come in late, they don't say anything about it. We do the mock interview, and at the end, I'll say, you know, you may have done a good job in the interview, but I wouldn't hire you. And they're kind of like, why?
Yeah.
I'm like, you were late. And in this day and age, like this, there's no way you should not be able to communicate that. So arrive early, make sure you know where you're going, and communicate if something comes up. The interviewers will understand, but you need to communicate. Obviously, appearance and apparel, dressing professionally during the interview, all those nonverbals are very important. Posture, placement of hands. We often joke about some people are big hand talkers. And the difference is now between virtual interviews, like where I am right now, you only see my head in the box. I could be moving my hands all over, you don't know, and kind of get away with it. If you are in an in-person interview, you got to pay a little bit more attention to what those hands are doing if you're a hand talker. Your eye contact, pace of speech, volume of speech, and then just projecting warmth, whether it's a virtual interview or an in-person interview. You may be really nervous, and the interviewers often know that, but do your best to you know, keep that nervousness on the inside as much as you can, and just smile throughout. That gives that sense of warmth that the employers or the grad school interviewers often really enjoy.
Yeah, that's important. Smile. I always sound like you're not going in for a mugshot, you know, like, so smile, you know, it's okay.
Absolutely. And again, without even sometimes not paying attention to the content of what you're saying, if you have the good appearance, if you work the smile in, if you have good pace of speech, that's a lot right there. That's a lot right there without even saying a word. The verbal communication then, you know, always be ready for that quick icebreaker. Hey, how are you doing today? Or how was your drive? Or, you know, what's the weather like where you are if you're interviewing across the country? A little bit icebreaker talk's always good. The deceptively tricky question of tell us a little bit about yourself. That's one that we always tell students to be ready for, because you can't talk for 5 minutes about your life, and you want to kind of strategically be thinking about what to include in that response, and we can help you with that. Being prepared to talk about things in your resume, or on your application, or even LinkedIn. The big 4 areas I like to say is your academics, especially if it's a grad school or professional school. They're going to have your transcript. They could very easily ask, ooh, I see you took a course with this title. Tell me about that. Or what's your hardest course? Or if you had to take an admissions test, you know, what'd you think about that? Or I noticed you did kind of really well in this sub-score area of the test, or really poorly here. So you want to reflect on that and think about how to respond before you get there. The personal things about yourself, attributes, skill sets are always good. The experiences that you've had, and really that's the content of the application or the resume itself. And again, reflect on each of those experiences and think about what you would say about them if they ask you about it. It's low-hanging fruit types of questions. And then about the profession itself, you always want to do your homework on the company or on the school that you are applying to. So if they ask you, why are you interested in our company, or what would you like most or like about doing this or that? You're ready to go. You can think about many of these things on the spot, but you'll be better off if you think about them in advance. And then finally, at the very end of the interview, when they inevitably say, are there any questions you have for us? The cardinal sin of interviewing is to go, nope, I'm good.
All good.
Right? You always want to have a question or two or three, depending on time, to ask the interviewer. So if you're someone like me that, I'm a little bit introverted, like I do better with a plan, I come up with those questions in advance. And you want to be sure to ask questions that are not easily found on their website. For example, if you were, let's say, interviewing with a law school, and I will preface by saying not all law schools do interviews, don't ask them their average LSAT score.
Yeah.
That just shows laziness, right? It's right there in many places on their website or on the internet. So again, make sure that your questions are thoughtful and insightful and not easily found.
And also to piggyback off of that is to make sure that the questions that you're asking really do help you decide if you're going to take that position or not. We don't want to just ask questions for the sake of asking, like Erin, like you're saying, like don't ask something that's easily on their website. So you're like, oh, I asked a question. It's showing that I am interested. It has to be specific. It could be, what's the workplace culture like there? Or tell me how you got into this, or or as a first year person in this position, what do you see as some of my potential stumbling blocks or obstacles? But I like that you made that point, like you don't just want to grab random facts off of the website just to show them like, hey, look, I looked. But I think that might be at least better than like, nope, I don't have any questions, because at that point, you're definitely showing that you've done no research, no homework. You're just looking for a job at this point.
That's right. And I'm actually a big fan of when students can do it, and this is almost like next level thinking about those questions. I feel like the questions that the interviewee asks speaks a lot about who they are and their priorities. An example is I interviewed someone recently for a job. Their very first question was, how much does this pay? Now, a valid question, but maybe not one to lead with. As the interviewer, it makes me think, well, of course we want them to think that the content of the job is important, but he was kind of sending me in a different direction with that question. Or if you're applying to, let's say, a medical school, and one of the things that you really loved in your undergraduate experience was international mission trips, right? And that's all over your application to that medical school. You may ask that interviewer for that med school interview, what types of, trips, whether they're domestic or international, or, for service or mission trips, do the students do at this med school? That question is going to tell that interviewer that that is something that's important to you, not just a random question that you found on their website.
I like that.
All right. That's everything I have today.
I think a big piece to it, I know we talked about this briefly earlier this week when we were talking about it, is the nonverbal communication, your facial expression. Everybody knows what RBF is, and I'm not going to go into detail. You can look it up if you don't know what that means. But it's when you walk around with this like crazy focused face. And I tell this story that I lost a job that I thought I was going to be perfect at. I was early. I was just professional. I was the first one there. I was front row. It was a group interview. It was an all day thing. But because I was like laser focused and I had like a scowl on my face, the interviewer, she couldn't get past it. And like we had our first break about 2 hours into it, and I was cutting up and laughing. I kind of relaxed a little bit. And she even said, she was like, wow, you're really, really funny. And I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. She's like, yeah, I thought you were such a, when I first met you, just because of my face. And she couldn't get past it. And I didn't even get to move on to the second round of interviews. Now, fair, not fair, but it was that first impression that I have to take responsibility for, and I'm trying to explain to students all the time, like, when you smile, it's a completely different beast. Like, it's a completely different persona that you're putting out there. Yes, you're trying to be professional, but professional doesn't mean angry, or it doesn't mean, like you're unapproachable. When you have that unapproachable face and you're all the time, like because the interview starts, like you said, it starts before the interview. It starts in the emailing. It starts, in the phone conversation. It starts when you're in the parking lot. If you're scowling and rude to people, that's all that nonverbals that you're putting out there. That's how you're going to represent the company. And that could be a huge problem if you're not careful with your nonverbals.
Absolutely. Smiling is key.
All right. Well, thank you again, Erin, for sharing your insight on this. I know that you're super passionate about this. If you're in my class, we also go into a little deeper dive into this, and I share a couple more examples and kind of get the feel for like what, like how you can communicate with your friends and family versus your professors and people in your professional circle. So I think that's super important. But thank you again. This was our first call for this semester. I appreciate your insight as always, Erin. And students, please, again, if you want your attendance counted, you definitely need to, I'm going to put this back up here. You can click on scan the QR code, or I put the link in the chat pod for the, where you can click on for the attendance. I will have this recording for anybody who is interested. Other than that, thank you again, Erin, and everybody have a great day and welcome to the new semester.
Thank you.
Thank you.